Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting out or managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it easy to create a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything from products to content to time, all in one place, all on your terms. Their design intelligence empowers anyone to build a beautiful, more personalized website tailored to their unique needs, while Squarespace Payments is the easiest way to manage your payments in one place with Squarespace. Onboarding is fast and simple. All of the tools you need to engage your subscribers, drive sales, and simplify your audience management. Set up automated emails to build connections while saving time, and easily integrate your products into email templates to drive sales and increase site traffic. Check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to www.squarespace.com/oliviareadsalatte to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Hello you guys, welcome to a new video. We are gonna be going through my 2024 favorites. Originally, I had almost 25 favorites. Worry not, I've whittled it down to 11, I believe, and honestly, depending on how I feel, we may cancel the last one because it was like fun, but I don't need everyone and their mother to go read it, you know what I'm saying? So we'll see if we make it to the list, but let us go ahead, get some water. Make sure, go grab your water, this is your time. So, I read quite a bit. I think I read like 115 books this year. And honestly, slay on my part, personally. I don't know what happened. I used to really care about reading enough books, and now I'm like, okay, but are they good? And I think that I had a pretty solid reading year. Not gonna lie, I really think I owe that to just being a true DNFer. If I read the first sentence and I don't like where the comma was, get it out of here. And sometimes I would go back and I would read it again and I'm like, oh, you know what, actually, I was being kind of harsh. And it was good. Or other times I go back and I'd be like, you know what, I wasn't harsh enough. That is why I never really bring to y'all worst books of a year, because I don't know about them. I don't stick with them. Not enough to talk about them. So I'm gonna go just in order of when I read them, because I usually just toss them onto a shelf on Goodreads. That's how I organize them. I know it's like cutting edge. What else do you expect from me? But the first book was The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, which is book 1 in the First Law trilogy. And let me tell you about Joe and I. Okay, we're having a year in 2025. Like, I am obsessed with this man's books. I can't even really, I can't really even explain it. I need a moment. Seriously though, I just absolutely fell in love with fantasy once again, specifically adult fantasy, when I went back, and because this is an older published title, I was like, you know what, let me give it a shot. Let me give it a shot, because one of my faves, this is her, like, not one of her faves, but it was one of the books that I watched her read for the first time when I was watching her channel. And now I see. I understand the reactions. And I am fully swan diving in 2025. We will talk about that next week. If you're interested, it's on the TBR. Do not worry. But here's the fun part for me. I super hate coming up with a synopsis, because I am someone who doesn't even watch movie trailers, because it's not really a spoiler, but I enjoy not knowing almost anything about a book. I enjoy knowing a tagline and comp titles. That's what I like. And I don't really read synopsis unless I'm in the middle of like the first fourth to third of the book and I'm like, hey, so what's happening? Then I will go back and I'll read the synopsis. But by then usually I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I did get what's going on. It's like, you're supposed to be confused. Great. But with this one, we're gonna try. So I will say our 4 main players are Logan Ninefingers, who is a notorious barbarian who's got, name him, 9 fingers. And he is, for better or worse, down on his luck. He is going through it. He has just lost all his buddies, and we meet him opening scene, literally fighting for his life, thinking he won, and then low-key kind of dying. And And it's like, there he is. And I love this man because he is a mess and a half. And I'm like, if I was in a fantasy world, I would be this, but not strong. You know what I mean? Like, I would have gone back to the mud right after coming out the mud. Like, it would not work for me. But Logan, killing it, literally. Then we have Giselle, I think. He is a pretty boy who is part of the guard. Maybe he's a captain. He's in the army. He's like slicing and dicing, and he does like the sword fighting for fun or whatever in these little duels. And I kind of can't care less about him. So moving past. Actually, he's a lot better in the second book. But he's also going through it in that second book. So bless him. Then we have Glokta. Okay? Yes, ma'am. We have Glokta. He is the Inquisitor, which I know you're like, so should you giggle over an Inquisitor? Listen. I can't explain these things to you, but I love this man. He is dealing with chronic pain. Hey. He is dealing with being like just bitter. A bitter Betty. And you know what? Some days I get it. Some days I get it. And he, you know, tortures people to get confessions that are probably not like legitimate in the least. Okay, sure. And he's starting to realize, oh, hey, this government I'm working for / with / just within is kind of sketchy. And there's a lot of political maneuverings within his point of view of things. And I love it. It is so intriguing. He is so petty. He is such a petty man. He's so funny with it though. His sense of humor is hilarious. And I do think it'll be a 50-50 shot for you if you read this, if the audiobook works. Because I don't necessarily love the narrator because it kind of distracts me from the book. But also now that I read the second book with no narration, I can't unhear that narrator's version of Glokta, and it is kind of iconic. And then the last character we have in this mix, I mean, there's a lot of characters, but these I feel like are the main four. And then we have a lot of characters that are within their orbit, within, you know, each of their perspectives. We have Bias, the wizard. He's like he's the first wizard or something like that. He's this notorious historical figure, and he's back better than ever. But people don't, actually think it's him to an extent. And what is he doing? That's a good question. I do think he's trying to warn them of something. There's like a war brewing, tensions are rising. There's a lot, like there's a big bad guy who's trying to come and like take over everybody, and Logan's already kind of like encountered this guy. Giselle, has he? I don't know. See, I'm really trying not to pull from Before They Are Hanged, which is the second book. But in The Blade itself, it's just a good time. The humor is just enough. It's not overdone. That's a big thing for me. Sometimes it's like, okay, pump the brakes. This is not a stand-up, okay? You were slicing and dicing and telling jokes. Like, this is getting a little weird here. Perfect symmetry for me in this one. I also think that the political maneuverings and all of this, like, I don't know, just kind of back and forth of betrayals, reveals. I love it. It was a good amount. It was interesting. It was intriguing. There are some battle scenes, I think more in the second book, and I really liked that more. I preferred to have those in there. I am a battle scene girl. I do enjoy them, but they can become cumbersome. This was not. It was a good amount. And I think it was a really good read. It was definitely character driven, which is usually not my forte. I don't typically like that. I typically aim more towards world building, magic systems, that kind of thing being the main thing. But this one's a pretty simple world, at least from where I'm at now. It could expand, I don't know. But it's a fairly simple one. It's not too overcomplicated. The characters and the character study of it all is really the main thing. And that's, I did not think I was going to really like that, but I did. I was like, oh my god. Imagine, you just have to like the characters to like character-driven stories. Who would have thought? I unlocked that. You're welcome. Here you go. So, next up, very similar vein, What the River Knows. This is a YA. I would toss this one out as like almost a YA recommendation for me if you enjoy the Veronica Speedwell series. Yes. I think it has a lot of that energy. It's very clever. It's very funny. Our main character, her parents were very much into archaeology, all these things, and they mysteriously go missing, end up dead, and it just isn't adding up. So she decides to go to Egypt and kind of get involved in that and see what's really going on. And it becomes more and more clear things are not how they were told to her. Like it's very suspicious. And so her uncle, I believe it's her uncle, I can't remember if it's a biological uncle or just like a friend that's an uncle, you know, but I think that it's her uncle has someone that is working as his assistant, and he and our main character kind of team up to look into these secrets and this mysterious stuff going on. And it is just very fun. If you like The Mummy, if you like Deanna Raybourn, I think you would enjoy this. It's a good little time. I loved it. The banter was great. I also think if you enjoyed the banter of Divine Rivals or Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco, this would also work for you. It doesn't give Carrie Maniscalco's more recent works, but it definitely has the same vibe as Stalking Jack the Ripper, and I really liked it. Next up, I have Bless Your Heart, which is a novel that is set in the 90s in Southeast Texas, I want to say. And basically we have 4 generations of women that run this, almost said murder house. This is not American Horror Story. They run, what is it called? A funeral home. And essentially their whole thing is they make sure the dead stay dead. Yes, you heard that right. The dead stay dead. As in, they could not stay dead. And in fact, one of them does not stay dead. And they're like, oh crap, the Strigoi are back, which is like the original vampires or whatever. So they have to now figure out who is bringing back these vampires, what is going on in the House of Commons, and fix it before the whole town figures out about it. And I thought this was so fun. I loved it. It is like a cozy horror. I just think that that is a new thing in my brain. I don't know if that's an actual genre. I kind of doubt it, but it was, because it just reminded me of a cozy mystery, but with a little bit more gore to it because of the vampire of it all and the undead of it all. And I just really thought it was so fun. And if you are an audiobook person, the audiobook's really fun. They have accents and they are pretty accurately done accents. It's not like over the top kind of thing that's distracting. I just really like this and I would highly recommend it. And then following in the same vein of cozy horror, I have The September House. And in this one, we have a woman who has finally moved into the house of her dreams with her husband. But every September, the house walls bleed? Yeah. So actually, going back to when I mentioned Murder House American Horror Story, this is kind of like that because there are ghosts that are just living their lives within this house. The walls bleed every September, and then all of a sudden, can't imagine why, her husband's like, I gotta go, and gets out of there, and then their daughter is like, hey, why can't I find Dad? Why is he not answering me? What is going on? Why are you avoiding every time I ask about him? I'm coming to town. I will tell you, the daughter was the worst part about this book. She was so annoying. Every time she was on page, I was like, wah, 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 wah. Get out of here. Where's the wall? And then we would go see the wall and we'd see a ghost, and it was very great. I thought the descriptions were so creepy, and that is why I still would think this is like a horror. But for some reason, the vibes and the atmosphere were still kind of cozy. And I think that's because the audiobook narrator did a really good job of making our main character just kind of like, oh, you know, I'm just making cookies. Pan over, there's like a literal demon in the corner. And she's like, no, that's not there. Don't even worry about it. Do you want chocolate chip or macadamia nut? And I just loved it. It was just really fun. Another audiobook that I would definitely recommend. Actually, I was kind of on a kick with audiobooks this year because Project Hail Mary, when I tell y'all, if you are able to, the audiobook is the way to go with this. There are just some elements in here I promise you, you are gonna want to hear. I was not willing to listen to the people at first. I was like, y'all don't know what you're talking about. They do. Sometimes they don't, but this time they do. I promise you. It is so worth listening to the audiobook. Okay, so for this one, I'm just gonna tell you what you know when you first get into the book, because I think it's better that way. I think revealing his backstory, what's going on, why he's where he is a very intriguing thing to unravel as you listen and go on. So our main character wakes up in a spaceship and he's like, hey, what the hell? And he looks over and it's 2 dead people. One would have been enough, but there's 2. Oh my god. And he's like, okay, so, hey, what's going on? So he has to start figuring out what's going on, because it doesn't look like it's great, and it's not. And you figure out why he's there, what he's meant to be doing, what put him in this position in the first place, what happened to the other people, what's currently happening to him, what's going to happen. Like, oh, it was so good. And I cried like a little baby with this book. But please, if you are able to, I still think it would be a good book if you didn't listen to the audio. I still think you could, if you like can't, I think it is still a good book, but there's just a little like razzle dazzle. And I remember being maybe 30-40% in, and it said something, and I paused the book as I'm building my closet over there. I have the vlog, and I was just like, oh my god, is what I think about to happen about to freaking happen. Tinfoil hat is activated. I just had so many reactions to this book. It was just such a fun time. It's actually now in my favorite books to reread stack, because I am going to reread it this year. It is just phenomenal, and I cannot recommend it enough. And if you think that you wouldn't like it because it's got a science fiction, like it's very heavy on the science fiction, I would say it's heavy on the science fiction in the same way Dan Brown is heavy on the historical fiction. Like, it's not, you know, it is a huge part of the book, but they explain it to you. Like, you're gonna understand what's going on because they're gonna tell you. They're not just gonna leave you dry and hanging because thinking that, you know, well, you got your degree in that too, right? No, sir. What are you talking about? He will tell you, so don't even worry about that. Next, actually, speaking of historical fiction, I read The Warm Hands of Ghosts, and I had no idea who this author was. I had never read anything by them, but I liked the cover because it looked like another book that I really enjoyed, which is The London Seance Society. Literally nothing alike, but it was so good. So we're following a nurse who was on the front lines during the Great War, and it's still going on at this point, but she is discharged for, I can't recall why, but she is. And this deals with there was an explosion that happened in Canada, I believe it was, during this time period, and she's kind of reeling from this happening and how that affected her family and her life. But then she also gets a mysterious box that basically tells her there is something up with your brother. And I think this, like, what she got is meant to indicate that he is dead. And she's like, no, there's no way. This is weird. This is suspicious. So she's like, forget about this. I'm going back. So she goes back to the front lines to go find her brother. And we also get his point of view as we see what has happened to him and what he is currently going through. And this was just magical. And I cried like a baby. I don't even really know why. I just did. It was so emotional for me. It was so freaking good. I just would highly, highly recommend this one. I read it with my eyeballs. I loved it so much. I even bought a special edition of it after I read it, and I almost never buy books after I read them because I'm like, I already read you. I don't need to own it now. But no, that one, I don't even know, y'all. It was just so good. And I don't even like historical fiction because usually I think it's boring, but now I'm like, well, hold on. You're gonna make me cry like that? That might be worth it. Then I got back into some thrillers for the time being, and I read The First Lie Wins. And in this one we are following our main character. I think her name might be Evie, and I only remember that because that's the main character of The Diviners, which is one of the best series of all time if we ignore the last book. But actually, I don't think the last book was as bad as I keep saying it is. We're gonna reread that. We'll see. Anyways, First Lie Wins. Miss Evie that's not her name, because she is essentially like a I don't know if she's a con artist. She almost is like a spy, kind of. But she works for this guy called Mr. Smith. Ain't that suspicious? So he gives her a name that she's gonna go by, like an alias, and then a target, which is the name of the person she's supposed to get close to. She has done that. The problem is she actually likes this guy now, and it's like, whoop, that's gonna be a problem. So she's, you know, starting to make friends, starting to put roots down. That is not the goal of this. The goal is to dig up dirt on this person. But then she starts to get introduced to some other, it's either colleagues or friends that he has, but one of the people she's introduced to has her actual name. And she's like, hey, what's that about? So now she's trying to figure out who Mr. Smith is, what game he's playing, if he's the only one playing the game, if she's supposed to also be playing this game, if the guy that she is like the mark, that he is the mark, if he's playing the game. Like it's a mess. It was very messy, it was very dramatic, it was a fun time. I really liked it. I read this one also from the library, didn't listen to the audio, and I thought it was great. Now, the next thriller that I listened to, and I highly recommend listening to because I think it is just so well done, is Listen for the Lie. Is it Amy Tintera? I usually don't even remember author names, I'm not gonna lie to you. But I think I did at that time because I was like, oh no, I need more, because I think that she has also written YA fantasy. There was a lot of authors that write YA fantasy coming over to the adult thriller genre this year, and I need that to keep happening because El Casamano has done that. I think Amy Tintera. I even think the author of The First Lie Wins. Is that Ashley Elston? I don't know, but there's so many, and they're good at it. I'm like, oh my god, no, another one. See you next year, for real. Like, I need more. This one was so freaking good. So this woman has left the town that she grew up in because her best friend got murdered, and everyone, including her, thinks that she did it. And no one knows because she doesn't remember anything. But what she does know is she was found by the police walking down the street the morning that they also found her best friend, and she was covered in her best friend's blood. Which it's like, oh yeah, that's not good. Not even a little bit, that's bad. So a guy with a podcast, yeah, he decides he is gonna figure this one out. And she actually entertains talking to him about it. And they kind of do launch into this investigation of their own to figure out what actually happened. Because she doesn't remember, but there are things that are resurfacing that she's kind of remembering, that the town knows, and it's just very messy, small town. The podcast elements are so well done. It was just so good. It was so good. I think I finished it in like a day. I am not this way with many audiobooks, but this is one of the ones where I literally, willingly created chores for myself to do. I did the laundry. That's how much I like this book, because I wanted to listen to this book more. And I'm like, well, I gotta do something. I can't just lay there like a mummy in bed. I also did that though, because there was only so much laundry to do. I wasn't gonna create more. It was so good. You gotta read it. You just got to. Then I read kind of a cozy mystery-esque, I would say. It's kind of the cozy mystery meets thriller crossover thing that's going on. Finlay Donovan does that too. I think if you like Finlay Donovan, you'd like this. This is actually a recommendation that El Casamano, the author of Finlay Donovan, gave at the last book signing that I went with my friend with. I think, like, was it last year maybe? But every time I go on vacation, someone dies. Such a fun book. I loved it so much. I loved it to the point that I actually bought a physical copy, because it was that good, and I'm very excited for the sequel to come out this year. This one, we are following a woman who writes kind of, honestly, actually I think kind of like a Finlay Donovan cozy thriller series. And she is kind of stuck in this bad deal because the guy that she based the love interest in that book on, it's very clear that that's him, so he's kind of manipulating that of using his person in a book to get his cut of the book deals and all these things. So they're going on a book tour, and someone tries to take his life, and he enlists her, the author, the main character, to try to figure out who did that. So on this entire vacation, they're going on this vacation with like huge fans of the book series because it's like a sweepstakes that they're doing. So she's trying to battle this man and his need to be not murdered to solve who's gonna do it or who's trying to do it, to interact with all of like her agents, her co-workers, all these things, and her huge fans. And it is a mess, and it is so good. Oh, I just loved it. I loved it so much. It was so much fun. It really is like the perfect summer kind of thriller, but it's not scary at all. So if you don't like scary, it's basically a cozy mystery with the pacing style of a thriller. That's what I would say to me in my head when I say a cozy thriller or a cozy horror. A cozy horror is just a cozy mystery but has more horror elements, so like the gore is gonna be upped and there's just a little bit more scariness to it. But a cozy thriller has got the cozy mystery vibes, but the pacing of the plot and the intensity of the mystery are just amped up, which I think would work for a lot of people who don't tend to like cozy mysteries. And then the last two books that I have are fantasy romances. I have The Crimson Moth, which, is that a YA? I don't remember. I have the UK edition and I don't remember the publishers that well for the UK ones, but this one was really fun. It is one that I would say if you liked Serpent and Dove, you may like this one because she is a witch in this world where they obviously are not allowed to have magic, not allowed to be witches, and he's a witch hunter, and she is this vigilante who is saving people who were going to be either imprisoned or killed because they're witches, and getting them out of town in the dead of night. She's known as the Crimson Moth, and he is hunting for her, but they're also kind of working together in another way. Like, it is so messy. It is so good. It was so good. And I'm so excited for Rebel Witch, which is the sequel. And then the last book of the year, I gotta go really fast because my battery is flashing at me, was Phantasma. So this one, we are following a girl and her sister whose mother just passed. They live in New Orleans. So already I was like, oh, yes. Her whole family does necromancy based magic, and they're kind of known and help out their community a lot via that. And her mom had a bunch of debts and a lot of mysterious stuff going on that she didn't really know about until she inherited all of it, and she also inherited the powers. And her sister runs off to just save the day and joins Phantasma. Think Caraval with how it's this game that you can join, but instead of it being fun, it is basically Dante's Inferno, different layers to hell, and each demon has like a different game that you have to play and pass, and at the end you win. It's either like you get a wish granted or you just win your desire. I can't remember what the actual prize was. I don't think it was money because I don't know that demons would really care about money, but whatever. So her sister joins that, and so very much kind of like Caraval, she goes to actually take place in these games, and she teams up with a ghost in the house who is gonna actually help her. And I loved it. I thought it was very fun. I really do recommend it. I thought it was a really good time. I read it in like 2 days, I think. I just flew through it. It's very much got the gothic aesthetic, the vibes, the atmosphere. It was a really fun time. So those were my top reads for 2024. You'll have to let me know down below if you enjoyed any of these, if you want to read them, or what your favorites of 2024 were. I'm very intrigued to know. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure that you drink your water, stay hydrated, be kind, lead with empathy, and go have a good day on purpose. And I will see you in the next one. Goodbye. Side by side, our fears are done. All the good times just begun.